Thank you to all who have dialed into the teleconference for standing by. Welcome to the open meeting of the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. During the call, you will be in listen-only mode. If you should require technical assistance from AT&T Teleconference Services, please press star, then 0. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded, and a recording is expected to be made available on the PCAOB website. I would now like to turn to Chairman Dunkey to formally convene the meeting.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. This is an open meeting of the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board on March 29th, 2021. We welcome you who have joined us today by dialing into the teleconference or listening to the webcast of this meeting. Today, the board will take up a staff recommendation to adopt a charter for a new advisory group. Before we proceed with the agenda, I will note for the record that all board members are participating in this meeting and are able to hear one another. The only order of business before the board today is a staff recommendation that the board adopt a charter to establish a new standards advisory group and dissolve the standing advisory group and the investor advisory group. To present the staff's recommendation, I will turn to our general counsel, Ken Lynch. Over to you, Ken.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Dunkey and board members. As discussed in the memorandum before you, we recommend that the PCAOB establish the Standards Advisory Group and dissolve the prior advisory groups. Consistent with the strategic plan goal of enhancing transparency and accessibility through proactive stakeholder engagement and the related objective to cultivate effective and dynamic dialogue with stakeholders, the newly constituted advisory group would enable the board to receive timely, relevant, and transparent advice on issues and questions posed by the board. I would like to thank the attorneys in my office who worked on this initiative, and I particularly want to acknowledge the contributions of John Cook, Drew Dropkin, Vince Meehan, and Matt Golden. Deputy General Counsel John Cook will now present the recommendation. John.
Thanks, Ken. Good morning, Chairman Dunkey and board members. Today, we present for the board's consideration a recommendation to approve the charter of the Standards Advisory Group pursuant to Section 103A4 of the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and PCAOB Rule 3700. We appreciated the opportunity to work with the board to understand its vision for a new advisory group structure and to implement that vision in the charter for the new Standards Advisory Group. There are two features of the new SAG that I would like to highlight this morning. First, membership. The new SAG would have 18 members, including, first, 5 investors. These SAG members shall have substantive expertise in investing in securities or analyzing equities or bonds for investors, and shall be actively and principally engaged in selecting securities, managing portfolios, or allocating assets for retail or institutional investors in the U.S. public capital markets. Second, 3 audit committee members or directors. These SAG members shall be either members of the audit committee or members of the board of directors of an entity whose financial statements must be audited by a public accounting firm registered with the PCAOB. Third, 3 financial reporting oversight personnel. These SAG members shall be persons, other than members of an audit committee or board of directors or their equivalents, who have direct or indirect responsibility for the preparation of financial statements of public companies, brokers, or dealers. Fourth, 3 academics or others with specialized knowledge. These SAG members shall be members of the academic community, corporate governance or corporate finance experts, or persons who otherwise have specialized knowledge with respect to investing, financial reporting, accounting, or auditing. Finally, 4 audit professionals. These SAG members shall be individuals from registered audit firms. Members shall be drawn from audit firms of differing sizes and shall collectively have experience or expertise that includes audits of emerging growth companies and broker-dealers. Under the charter, the board would seek nominations via press release or other public notice and would include self-nominations. Members from the audit profession would be nominated by the Center for Audit Quality. Second, tasking. The board would look to the Standards Advisory Group to provide advice and insight as to the need to formulate new standards or amend existing standards, and for opinions on the impact of proposed new or amended standards, among other things. It will primarily undertake to do so through the performance of tasks. Under this new tasking structure, the PCAOB would assign the Standards Advisory Group specific tasks, and subsets of the group, which are referred to as task forces, would handle those assignments. The meetings and other activities of the advisory group would be scheduled as needed to respond to the board's tasks, rather than operating on fixed intervals. A majority vote of the task force would be required to approve a deliverable for submission to the board. A task force's deliverable to the board will be aligned to the nature of the task. Finally, in light of the function that the new SAG is intended to serve in performing outreach to and receiving input from investors and other stakeholders on key matters under active consideration by the board, we also recommend that the board dissolve two prior PCAOB advisory groups, the Standing Advisory Group and Investor Advisory Group. Thank you, and we are happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that very much. I'll make a statement, and I'll turn to my fellow board members to do the same. When the board first engaged in public outreach in connection with drafting our strategic plan, we heard loud and clear the need to significantly expand and improve our stakeholder engagement. At that time, the board's outreach strategy was confined almost exclusively to two advisory groups. But as their names implied, they were also the primary means of obtaining outside advice. Many noted, however, despite the expertise and stature of the participants, the structure effectively conflated the distinct functions of outreach and expert advice and consequently produced neither very effectively. Therefore, we concluded that the historical model was outdated and would not serve us either or our stakeholders well going forward. So we determined to separate the board's outreach from its efforts to receive advice and to expand and improve how the board did both. I'm extremely pleased with the progress we've made since 2018 to improve the board's outreach. By making outreach an area of consistent strategic focus, we have exponentially expanded our reach outside the PCAOB and access to it. We've reached far more stakeholders far more often than we have ever in our history, and we've reached them more effectively. We hired our first ever stakeholder liaison in 2019. Her name is Erin Dwyer, and for those of you who may be listening today, she is your first point of contact if you are looking to reach out to us. For the last several years, she has been actively engaged with hundreds of investors, audit committee members, preparers, and others. As board members, we have participated in dozens of external events tailored specifically to investors, audit committees, preparers, and others. We've held our own PCAOB-sponsored roundtables, both in person and virtually. In 2020 alone, we connected with investors in one-on-one meetings at roundtables that collectively among them maintain more than $26 trillion in assets under management. Since 2019, we have reached out to and engaged with nearly 700 audit committee chairs and engaged with them in one-on-one discussions that have addressed topics ranging from PCAOB inspections and standards to audit committee efforts to oversee their audit firms, COVID-19, audit quality indicators, and data and technology. These efforts have yielded frequent and consistent dialogues and have allowed us to exchange perspectives on topics of mutual interest. We have learned much from these interactions and have made responsive changes to our oversight work as a result. As just one example, many of the changes we made to the structure and content of our inspection reports flowed directly from these conversations. We plan to continue to emphasize and expand our outreach efforts in the coming months and years. When we decided to reimagine how we obtained formal advice from stakeholders, we determined to find an approach that the board could support unanimously and that would improve the depth and quality of the advice we received. I'm pleased that we now have arrived at that point. The new advisory group will allow the board to obtain advice on important issues related to existing or future PCAOB standards. We will provide the new group ample time and support to develop in-depth advice and perspectives on assigned topics. The group will have the ability to report its perspectives and share its advice with both the board and the public. The group will have diverse membership and experience and will include representatives from each of our core stakeholder groups, including primarily investors, as well as audit committee members and directors, financial statement preparers, academics, and other experts, and audit professionals. Of critical importance, we will have more investor voices in the group than from any other category, and we encourage our investor participants to be actively involved in all tasks. We look forward to announcing soon our call for nominations and to selecting members from the outstanding nominations we will no doubt receive. Once the board has selected our members, we expect to assign immediately one or more tasks to them. We acknowledge and recognize the substantial efforts of those who served previously on our advisory groups. Their contributions were an important part of advancing our mission to protect investors and further the public interest in the preparation of information, accurate, and independent audit reports. Those who will serve as members of our new Standards Advisory Group, we look forward to meeting you and working with you. If you haven't discerned by now, I fully support the recommendation before us and urge its adoption. Before I recognize my colleagues, I want to quickly acknowledge former board member Kaiser. Today's proposal reflects in large part an ongoing collaborative effort that includes substantive contributions from then board member Kaiser. I'll now turn to my colleagues for any statements they wish to make, beginning with board member Des Party. Going.
Thank you, Chairman Dunkey, and I too support today's proposal for the new advisory group. As Bill, you mentioned, since 2018, a key strategic priority for the board has been to be more collaborative and engage with all stakeholders across the financial reporting ecosystem. And one important step in meeting that objective has been the establishment of the Office of External Affairs, which, as Bill mentioned, includes a dedicated liaison for outreach and engagement with investors, audit committee members, preparers, and others. I, too, have participated in various panels, roundtables, and other meetings organized with each of these stakeholder groups, and I have found such outreach to be instrumental in helping us better understand various viewpoints on the state of audit quality and the effectiveness of our programs. We should continue to expand these outreach efforts. At the same time, standing up the new Standards Advisory Group is another important way to obtain insights and advice. The SAG will include representatives from all of our major stakeholder groups so that we benefit from a comprehensive and a diverse array of perspectives to best inform our decision-making. The smaller size of the SAG will allow for more meaningful participation from each member, and the tasking approach will help ensure that we receive targeted advice that is most relevant to the standard-setting policy and other matters that we are considering. So I am eager for us to stand up the new model. I thank the staff and my fellow board members from over the past 3 years who have helped frame out its design. I also want to thank all of those who have served on our former advisory groups for the insights they have offered, which continue to guide and inform our decision-making today. Over time, with the new approach, we will assess the effectiveness and we will make any necessary adjustments to ensure that we receive the best advice possible to advance our mission of protecting investors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to you.
Thank you, Dwayne. Board member Goshorn Gerada.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for convening today's open meeting. I also want to express my gratitude to Ken and John for your presentation today and others in our General Counsel's office for the work on today's proposal. I, too, fully support the adoption of the proposed Standards Advisory Group Charter. As the Chairman has already discussed, the Standards Advisory Group will complement and build upon our ongoing outreach efforts. Our outreach efforts began in 2018 before I arrived at the board, and I credit my predecessor and current board members and our dedicated staff for launching this initiative. Since I joined, the PCAOB has continued to pursue its outreach goals through one-on-one calls, roundtables, presentations, and spotlight documents highlighting timely issues and topics. Our outreach has allowed us to hear from many stakeholders, including investors, financial statement preparers, and more than 700 audit committee members in the last 2 years. This diversity of perspective has been invaluable, and the relationships we have built have enabled us to stay in touch with stakeholders during this pandemic, learn about the challenges that they're facing, and issue publications specifically addressing those challenges. The Charter makes the mission of the SAG clear. The Standards Advisory Group will give us an opportunity to get focused advice on the PCAOB standards and improve, I believe, the PCAOB's standard setting process. As our research and standard setting agendas show, we have a number of projects that we expect to reach milestones within the next 18 months, and we are excited to have the Standards Advisory Group work with us as we move forward. I personally think that our audit evidence standard is a great opportunity for this group to use their knowledge and expertise to help us understand what investors, preparers, auditors, and others are seeing in this field. I would welcome any recommendations from the group on how to modernize our standard. At a time when firms are beginning to use sophisticated software analysis and other technology-based tools as part of their audits, our standard still refers to facsimiles. So I personally would like to make sure that our current standard is facilitating and encouraging the use of technology that will only improve audit quality. The tasking mechanism is also a particularly important aspect of the new Standard Advisory Group. Rather than providing information on a wide variety of topics as our outreach efforts do, the Standards Advisory Group will be able to focus on particular issues, dive deeply into those issues, and work on those issues on a longer-term basis. The SAG will address the issues where the PCAOB will benefit most from the group's focused energy. Additionally, I believe the tasking process includes a mechanism for the SAG to provide reports, presentations, or other deliverables that we can consider and incorporate into our rulemaking process, which is really important. I'm also pleased with the composition of the SAG. As John described, the group will consist of investors, audit committee members or directors, financial reporting oversight personnel, academics, others with specialized knowledge, and audit professionals. The diversity of experience that this group offers will be invaluable. Additionally, having investors included in the same group as other participants who are focused on audits and financial reporting will allow the investors to share their opinion with the group from the beginning of the process, ensuring that investors' voices are heard as part of all discussions. I believe that this combined group will facilitate more effective input from investors than the PCAOB would receive if we maintain two separate groups. As the charter makes clear, we encourage maximum participation by investors. The revisions to our advisory group charters are an important part of the evolution as an organization for the PCAOB. We are grateful to everyone who has served on the Standing Advisory Group and the Investor Advisory Group. We hope to have the opportunity to hear from each of you in the future. I also want to emphasize that the Standards Advisory Group is additive. Our stakeholder outreach will continue, and I am excited to work with the new Standards Advisory Group and to continue to participate in our stakeholder outreach. And I applaud all the work that Aaron Dwyer has done to date. At the PCAOB, we have an open door policy, and I would encourage anyone who has feedback for the PCAOB to continue to reach out to us. So thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Board Member Zietzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased to support the establishment of the Standards Advisory Group and the dissolution of prior advisory groups. One of the goals in our strategic plan is to enhance transparency and accessibility through proactive stakeholder engagement. The prior groups have served us well historically and over time have provided valuable input to the board. It is, however, important for us to continue to focus on the most effective ways to not only engage broadly and proactively with our various stakeholders, but also to receive advice on specific topics or issues. The advisory groups are one way for us to hear from our stakeholders. Public meetings of large groups may not, however, be the most effective way to hear or understand the views or concerns of all important stakeholders on specific matters. The approach that's embodied within the charter for the new group that we are approving today is, however, new and different. I think the smaller group will allow for more meaningful participation by individual members and, in particular, investors. Through the tasking process, the board will be able to seek targeted and timely feedback on specific issues, in particular as they relate to our standard setting activities. I'm looking forward to putting our new group in place and seeing how it works in practice. I also anticipate us being nimble and open to considering and making any necessary adjustments as we roll it out. Much progress has been made in the past few years to expand our outreach programs, including through the formation of the Office of External Affairs and the hiring of Aaron Dwyer, our first ever stakeholder liaison to investors, audit committees, and preparers. Under Aaron's leadership, we are engaging in targeted and fulsome conversations with our primary stakeholders in expanded and evolving ways. I believe the strategic outreach and our new advisory group are not only complementary, but will also allow us to engage with a wide variety of stakeholders in a meaningful and comprehensive way. I would like to thank those who have served on prior advisory groups for their important contributions, and thank you in advance to those who will apply to serve on our new group. I also want to thank my fellow board members for our constructive discussions and the staff who have provided support to the development of the charter that is the subject of today's recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Appreciate that very much. And, of course, we've all expressed our support, but just to make this official and is least awkward as possible, I'll ask you all to unmute your phones, and I'll ask for a quick vote. So all those in favor of approving the recommendation, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, no. There's none of us left, so I'll assume no. So the recommendation is approved. And that concludes the PCAOB's open meeting for today. Thank you all for participating. If there's no further business, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for coming today. We appreciate it. And you may now disconnect from the teleconference. Thank you.